also recognizing that we have a certain amount of resources and a certain amount of capabilities and limitations on the staff side. We can only go so far with that. And you're feeling that pain. I know for sure he is, because we've had enough discussions about plan development and other things as we've gone through the years, that it's one of those, okay, how do we balance that? How do we figure it out? And the system right now, Jim and I talk about things from different perspectives, and there's times we disagree on it, and we'll sit there and have that debate and have those issues with, we go to the mayor first or however, because we're looking for that guidance to say, okay, where does this, where are we going too far in light of what the council's the policy board wants? So, that's a constant given for us. Every day, everything we're doing. But the frustration is hard for us even as planners, because we know we want to diversify the land use. We know that. We know that probably our best opportunities are still commercial at the two interchanges. Those are our best opportunities, and we need to make sure we protect those areas and don't have those eaten up by lesser land uses, if you will. Because the highest and best uses around those interchanges is going to be sales tax driven, activities. So we know that for a fact. The industrial side, there's a real difference between different levels of industrial. What's a real good package and what's one that isn't? It's almost a case by case decision for guidance by you guys.
Dave, I completely agree with what you said. And the thing that brought this to my opinion is when I saw with the resources grid in the grid and natural gas infrastructure. When you're looking at that kind of infrastructure already there, that is nirvana for manufacturing. And when you look at that, that's naturally attract that type of land. And we need to be a little more open to what's going to be. And sometimes they take truck traffic, and we may not want to do that. We may say there's too much truck traffic for us, but we also have to be ready to go and let somebody else make that decision for us and have to live with it.
I think the phrase that Jim banters around a lot with us is the community has to get something in return for this.
I agree.
Right, and we've been hearing that message for a while now. I think that's a key message, is any of those items, what's the benefit to the community in the long run? We may have to tolerate some things that we don't like giving up on, a little bit, or a reduction of what we thought, but if the benefit comes back outweighing that, that's what we're looking for that balance.
Dave, I don't think this would ever happen. I'm going to just lay this scenario out. What if Olathe comes on the east side of the Strong property, and this is right down to the back side of that Strong property, and a data center says, hey guys, Olathe, we want to do this. They say, yeah, we've got 4 data centers, let's go, let's do it. And they plant the thing, and they say right where it's going to be 1,000 feet away, and we still have the same issues with the same people. Now we have no say. How do we address that?
Some of it, so jurisdictionally is what's our role as a city at that point. We go out and inject in part of the public process as far as going to those planning meetings and everything like that, stating the position of the city and trying to influence those communities as far as buffers and different thresholds and things like that. That's the element we look at when we're trying to protect our citizens from adjacent development, because we do go through that periodically. I'll use one that's really not a big one, but recently Rural Water 7 had a proposal in Johnson County for a new water tower near one of our boundaries. And so we were looking at, okay, how does that affect potential residential development that we might have in this area in the future? And so we make decisions about how to interject or at least try to influence those things. You're absolutely right. We don't have control of their decision-making ability. We don't have that, but we do have the ability to interject if we feel like it's necessary to help protect the citizens' interest or the community's interest at that point. And we will do that. We're informed by Johnson County. We talked to the Olathe people a lot, especially along 175th Street. They have a very different view of the 175th Street than we do, for a number of reasons. Not just the reasons for land development, but also for reasons regarding traffic flow and the way they designate that roadway. And so we're constantly trying to figure that out and work with it. I will say this with the Strong property, we would hold those regulations that we have in place that would buffer the land, and we would expect Olathe to do those kinds of things too. Now, will they? That's
up to them.
That's up to them at that point. I can't speak for how anyone would look at those things. I can tell you that, you know, as we looked at the Strong property and this proposal as planners, I don't wanna deal with development agreement, I don't wanna deal with it, as planners, we did a lot of research, a lot of looking into the impacts. We heard a lot of actually things and ideas that came up that surfaced through public discussion, came through council members about DVs and DVA and DVZs and DVCCAs, whatever the heck,
That's
where we were. And we were prepared with conditions and things that we don't know if they ever would have accepted or not accepted at that point in time. Doesn't matter.
That's up to them.
That's part of our engagement though. And it's the same when we hear about a proposal in another community. We're looking at it, and it's not unusual that I'll give a call to that planning director, and sit down and say, I need you to walk me through this, because I'm gonna get questions from council, I'm gonna get questions from Jim. What are they doing over there? What's going on? How is that gonna impact us? And we do that actively. That's all I can assure you of from that perspective.
That's really all we can ask. You know, I don't wanna be us versus them, or this side's right or that side's wrong. What I'm trying to get to is, how do we protect on the boundaries, on the peripheries? How do we, when we see these kind of natural uses of land and the attraction to certain types of development, and it's on the council to go with us or to go to another community, how do we protect our community, our citizens, and the investments that have been made already within our boundaries on stuff on the periphery? That's really the question.
The boundaries are.
This is quick, easy to see. With the intermodal, we had a situation there with a new warehouse recently, within the last year or so, that was put up there west of our boundary, just adjacent to it. And we had discussions with the staff and Edgerton regarding buffers and visual blocking and things like that. So that's where we try to at least engage on those boundary discussions. That's about the best we can do.
I think the 56, I think the geographic restrictions there, I think it's tough to develop there. However, if it was under contract, they're probably gonna play both sides. They're gonna come to us at some point. That's, I think, when
Exactly.
we can talk, we can have that discussion. But, I don't think there's a way to go out there and just take it all up and put it in our, some contract. I think that's the.
Well, half of those other contractors are ready.
Right. I think it's almost on a case by case, but I think there's time, if that develops, that we can then sit down and have those discussions. I don't think we'd say no, and just take it. Sometimes we didn't know. I think we absolutely build those discussions.
I think, Todd, what we're gonna probably see, especially in the west area, is we're gonna see something that's gonna have some level of truck traffic. And it's gonna have to come down to what level are we willing to tolerate and say yes to? And what are we gonna say no to? With the full understanding that if we say no, somebody else may say yes, and we may create consequences of it.
But I think that happens on a case by case.
Exactly, it's on a case by case basis.
We have any thoughts on Claire Road or?
It's actually both areas, I mean,
I think if you wanted to compare and contrast the two areas, you would choose Clare Road over the western side, because the western front, then you do have more potential for the trucks. Yes, you have trucks on Clare Road potentially, but at least they're gonna either go east on 175th as far as Olathe is concerned in industrial corridor, or they would possibly go south and end up on 199 outside of our jurisdiction, which will be an industrial corridor. Or they would go west and grab I-35. We're probably not gonna go through town a whole lot. So I would think if you wanna compare and contrast from a truck perspective, you would prefer Clare Road by a mile. It has the same infrastructure essentially, from the stuff Steve was talking about. You know, there's not a whole lot of residents in that area, we still have the ability to decide to put things there that will also be against Latho or Spring Hill, and then you can buffer that up into our residential that's gonna be behind our sales tax, New Trails, Parkway. So, if you're choosing to, that's fine.
Well, to that point, Mark, we need to make a decision, it's Clare Road, and which east-west road besides 175th, we wanna start kind of nudging towards a thoroughfare. Clare Road, I agree, is probably gonna have to be visible.
I mean, it would be great if it was actually between Clare and Edge on the eastern half.
That's our decision to make.
You know, so between Clare Crossing and Latho, but, which is doable, I guess, but, east-west would depend on what we want the rest of the south side to look like. But I do think if you're gonna put additional anywhere, the southeast corner is an option, because it's away from everything.
You're gonna have the same pushback we had to do ago, too.
Sure, but that's people that are out of town that we're encroaching on their farmland, right? That's gonna happen regardless of which city it is.
And that's why I'm also concerned about us being in that same position. Some other jurisdictions making decisions for us and our people.
But I think again, in the same scenario, we're never gonna just say flat. We're gonna say it's our decision. It's under contract, okay, we're definitely making some effort to move forward, let's talk, let's bring somebody else like that.
I agree.
Steve, I've got to leave here in about 10 minutes, I think.
Do we wanna figure out what we wanna do,
I think it's simple, I mean, I
I don't
don't,
know where we are right now. I mean, if we change.
Yeah, we can give direction, we can't take action.
Right. Right.
We also have to consider Clare Road, we've got, Ron's got 2 entities on Clare, and other development on the northwest side, but if we relying on Clare for the use traffic. Without that side.
Across.
But not, the northwest one.
Claire would definitely.
Oh, again, what track?
Like, that's your
I
rule.
mean, I think that's always been, there is a sweet spot of commercial, industrial, multifamily, lots of things that have lots of vehicles. Some are just lots of vehicles, some are trucks. There is a sweet spot of putting things where, you know, maybe it is industrial, but it has a few trucks. Maybe it's, you know, 4,000 apartments and it's a ton of vehicles, but it's not trucks, right? Either way, you gotta deal with traffic somehow, it just depends on what kind.
It's different.
Direction that we can go where do the truck traffic for our way of life, or chasing residential, commercial, and on the industrial, it's a case by case basis that staff brings to us. So I think everything that we've been doing is right in line with where our citizens are happy, and let's
fine with Dave's doing it. I mean, do we wanna draw some, a hard line? I don't know, not saying we have to, but
I think a hard line is difficult.
it
Based
is
on-
because we do it on case by case.
Yeah, and we don't know what the get is, right? So like, maybe 3 trucks for this is the max I'll accept for this project, but maybe if the max on this project 10 is okay because of what it's giving to our community.
Right, where I was going with that is, I don't think we can necessarily nail it down. I just think we, as this body has to be continuously thinking about, if Jim comes to us, what is your answer going to be in various scenarios? So that we can actually address something, so we don't have a, hey, we're willing to do this, we're not willing to do this, but we just don't know, right? We need to be able to give you an answer, that's all I'm saying. And it needs to be uniform from one development to another, maybe not the exact same values, but it needs to come from the same perspective of, we're protecting the residents in this way. Or we don't wanna allow this thing because of X.
I have a party thought, but it actually has nothing to do with the strategic plan, just something I have on my radar that I want to share. After our conversation a few months ago, I got sidetracked by data centers, but I wanted to go back and I would like to, I have reached out to several agencies in the area, I have some people contact me. I would like to put together a meeting with, if there's anyone in the city who would like to join, somebody from the police department, if anybody else from the governing body, plus the residents of Gardner, some, representatives from various churches in the area, Hope Market, Joyce Closet, to figure out what resources we have available for unhoused and struggling people in Gardner, and take what is now kind of a scattershot list spread out all over the place, put it all together into one central resource, so that when people come to various locations and say, I need help, we all have, all of those resources have access to the fullness of what various people in Gardner and companies and churches in Gardner and throughout all of Johnson County have to offer to make it easier to be able to assist people in coming in. So if there is anybody on the city staff who would like to be part of that, just email me. Somebody from the police department, I would love to have their, I'm looking at probably a month or 2 out, maybe even 3, because I know